Hello, in this video we're going to look at we're going to revise the cranial nerves, and then we're going to look at where the cranial nerves exits the skull. So here is the inferior view of the brain, and we're looking at the olfactory nerve here, cranial nerve number 1, the optic nerve. Here is your oculomotor, number 3. Number 4 is your trochlea, 5 is trigeminal, 6 is your abducent, 7 is your facial, 8 is your vestibulocochlear nerve, 9 is your glossopharyngeal nerve, 10 is your vagus nerve, 11 is your accessory nerve, and 12 is your hypoglossal nerve. If you want to know the function of these cranial nerves, I have a video on an overview video on the functions of the cranial nerves, and I'll provide a link to that. Now let us look at where these cranial nerves exits through the skull. So to do that, we have to look at the base of the skull. So this is a superior view of our skull, and we're looking at it from essentially the top, and we're looking down, and we've cut it across. So we're looking inside the skull, the base. So let's begin with cranial nerve number 1, which is your olfactory nerve. Now your olfactory nerve, it sits on the cribriform plate of the ethmoid bone, and its function is for smell. Your optic nerve, your cranial nerve number 2, it exits through what's known as the optic canal. Your oculomotor nerve, the trochlear nerve, and your abducent nerve, which are your cranial nerves number 3, 4, and 6, these nerves are the nerves responsible for the movement of the eyeball. They exit through the same hole known as the superior orbital fissure. So we missed cranial nerve number 5, which was your trigeminal nerve. And there are 3 big branches of your trigeminal, your V1, V2, and V3 branches of your trigeminal. Well, your trigeminal, the V1 branch of your trigeminal, it actually exits also through the superior orbital fissure. Well, what's important to know also is that all these nerves that exit through the superior orbital fissure, which are your oculomotor, trochlea, abducent, and your trigeminal V1 branch, also known as the ophthalmic branch, they actually pass through part of the brain known as the cavernous sinus. And the cavernous sinus is just a collection of essentially a venous system. And problems in this cavernous sinus, such as an infection, can cause complications associated with these cranial nerves. So I hope that made sense anyway. So let's look at the other branches of the trigeminal nerve, the V2 and the V3, and where they pass through. So the V2 branch, it passes through the foramen rotundum. The V3 branch, also known as the mandibular branch, exits through the foramen ovale. Cranial nerve number 7 is your facial nerve. And your facial nerve exits through the internal acoustic meatus. But there's also another nerve that exits through here, which is the cranial nerve number 8, your vestibulocochlear nerve. So the facial and vestibulocochlear nerve exits through the internal acoustic meatus. The next set of nerves, cranial nerves, exit through also the same hole. So these are your glossopharyngeal, cranial nerve number 9, vagus, cranial nerve number 10, and your accessory spinal nerve, cranial nerve number 11. They exit through the jugular foramen. Then you have the last cranial nerve, which is your hypoglossal nerve, which is your cranial nerve number 12, and this exits through the hypoglossal canal. Quite easy to remember. Just to finish everything off, this big hole here, this is your foramen magnum. This is where essentially the brainstem spinal cord passes through. And interestingly enough, your spinal accessory nerve actually loops down through this foramen magnum before exiting back up at that jugular foramen. So the spinal accessory nerve is an exception in terms of how it exits the skull. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching. Again, if you want to learn more about the cranial nerves, I'll have the link.